So, good morning.
Good
Uh,
morning, Susan. How are
how-
you? How was your weekend?
Good. It's been really hot here. We're having a rash of really high 90s. Luckily, I'm in a pocket where the air is much better than what you're dealing with. But yeah, so I my area has been a little bit less smoky than others, and I've been enjoying the time in my house with air conditioning, even though, and just trying to get some projects done, not only of myself, but, some more clients. And I've been trying to deal with, I have these Japanese beetles. I don't know if you deal with
Uh-oh.
those in your area. They're just, they're taking over my yard. It's not been good. And then I spray my hanging baskets and then they start to wilt because of the spray. It's not been good, but that's what I've been doing. Just kind of
At least you
weird
can be
stuff.
outside.
No, yeah, it's really nice. And then in the evenings it cools off. So I'm happy for that. It'll be like 82 or something, and I'll be able to take the dog for a walk. And so it's nice. Even though it's hot, I enjoy the weather and yeah, it's been
Yeah,
great.
I was stuck inside most of the weekend because our air quality, don't really love this, but I think Chicago had the worst air quality in the world for a day or two there where
I
you
saw that.
you literally could not go outside. You could smell it. You could feel it burning
Not
in
safe.
your throat and your
Yeah.
nose, and we were getting all the warnings, it's hazardous levels. And I mean, you can't stay inside. I have a dog. I can't not go outside, but it was very, very limited. It's a little bit better. It's quite a bit better today. I think it's just
Well,
going to
it's
go up
like,
and down.
what are you going to do? Put a little mask on your dog?
I know. Yeah, that would go over well. My dog won't even let me put the little stupid booties on him that all the dogs wear around here in the winter to keep their paws off the salt. There's no way he's putting a mask on.
Can you imagine?
I know. If somebody can invent that, go for it. But I'd rather just live in a place where it's not needed. So
Yeah.
he was going a little stir crazy. I don't like to be inside. And the fires they're just awful. We were up in that area a couple weeks ago, not exactly, but close. And it's just so beautiful. And now it's burning.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was
But
a
you caught a little
good,
bit of a air break over the weekend, right? So at least it's not every
yes, a
day.
little bit.
So,
It's definitely better today. It was a little better yesterday, hot, but you can be outside without burning your throat. So that's something. But really, really miserable.
yeah.
And
Well, I hope they get it under control and we get some weather to help mitigate the
yeah, you need
all
some
the
some big
fires.
rains, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of icky. So I just worked on some projects that had to get done inside. I cleaned out part of my closet. That was something that needed to be done. And I have been told by my family I'm not allowed to buy any more hoodies because I have a big old stack, which was
That's
part of why I
funny.
was cleaning out my closet. I know. Well, I had to pick up some. We were just up north and some of the parks, Isle Royale and Voyagers, and how could I not get actually, I didn't get a hoodie from there, but I went through one of the premier birding areas in the country, which is called Sax-Zimbog, and it's known usually for winter. That's when people go there because there's great birds there in the winter. But I was going to be there kind of driving through anyway, so we stopped to take a look. And I stopped in the visitor center and they told me they had these great sweatshirts and t-shirts and things, and she told me that 100% of the proceeds from those goes to fund the center itself and the area. It's all like
Yeah. So
very
you're
much
helping.
volunteer run. I know. So I was helping. So I had to get a sweatshirt and the kids got t-shirts. And I'm like to my husband, I think you need this. He's like, I don't need this. I said, yeah, you need this. So
I did that when I was in Yellowstone. Anytime it said the monies, went back to the park, I was like, okay.
yeah. Yeah. Well, now I figure I'll just wear it in the winter because I have a plan to go up in the winter when it really shines and I'll just wear it then.
Yeah.
So a weekend spent indoors. working on mostly personal stuff, a little bit of client stuff too, a lot of scanning happening in my business right now,
Same here.
which, yeah, scanning is a big, big topic right now. And I know
Tubs
you,
and tubs sitting
oh,
over there.
yeah. And I know that you have a lot of clients who've dropped off scanning recently. I have a lot that have dropped off scanning recently. And we've also been fielding a ton of questions all over the place on, how do I even start? How do I deal with these tubs of things? And whether you have just a shoebox or, 10 banker's box sizes of tubs of stuff, the process is kind of the same. So, we decided this month that that's what we're gonna tackle. Um,
Well, because if we could open up our doors and let you see us work, this is what we want to do. We want to kind of share with you our process, how we think about projects as we bring them on board, and how we prepare them so that we can keep track of them and process them in a way that, if we have to pause for a couple of days, we know exactly where we need to go to pick up. So, yeah, so that's what,
yeah.
we decided to talk about. And this again is going to be probably 30,000 foot level
Oh yeah.
discussion because we can't get into the nitty gritty on everything. But if you do have questions following this episode, reach out and maybe there's an area that we can dig, a little deeper in.
Yeah. So today we'll no guest, just the two of us, and we're gonna just go through start to finish how we would attack a scanning project. And the process is very similar whether we're doing it for a client or whether you are doing it DIY. It's not that different. The scale might be a little different, but in general. And we've got, the tools that we use, we'll share with you. And yeah, so
Well,
let's
let's get
dive
started.
in.
Yeah, let's get started. So, um, you know, a lot of times I think people they stop and get overwhelmed and
Mhm.
they never want to go back just because of the volume of what they're seeing. And again, sometimes it's a lot easier to have somebody who's not emotionally attached help you with this project because you go down memory lane time and time again when you're looking at stuff. And so you kind of have to put on your distraction free um, mindset and think of it as a project maybe that you're not doing for yourself but you're doing for others,
Mhm.
and then this way you can focus on the steps and not necessarily get down the rabbit hole of memories.
Yeah, and I would say we're starting today as more of you already know what you want to scan. We've done other episodes where we've talked about culling and how do you decide what to keep and what to get rid of. And if we tried to combine that with today's, we would never get anywhere. So today we're really starting with you already have what you want to scan. You already have them in whatever shape they're in, boxes or bins or whatever. But you already have that decided. We're not starting with the culling. Um, but you're right. I mean, the culling is actually where there's two places I think people give up. One is the culling, which we've discussed before. But it's also once you've decided what you're going to keep, how do you start, right? You've got, say you just have one box, right? Say you have one box, yay big, or one bin, and things are sort of shoved in there. um, how do you actually get started? You don't want to just randomly pick up a pile and throw it in a scanner because you will just get, if you have a mess going in, you're going to have a mess going out. So we want to make sure that we're giving you some steps to create some order before we actually dive into the scanning part because that will save you so much headache later. Organizing before you scan is so much faster than
And I was
organizing
I was trying
after.
to find which episodes we talked about culling, and at my
Yeah.
glance, it was we brought on Hale Shoa
Mm.
in July of 24, episode 13. And then the other thing is when we get to the scanning part, we also had another episode where we dove into scanning And so today we're going to touch on it briefly again. But we had another episode 14. It's kind of nice. They were side by
Oh
side,
yeah.
13 and
Look
14.
at
So we brought John Spear on. And so we'll put links to those on our website resource page.
Yeah. All right. So Susan, where do you start? What's the first thing that you do?
I gather like items. So when a client brings stuff to me, usually it's, as you said, there's albums, there's framed photos, there's loose photos, there's negatives, there's all kinds of things in these boxes that they bring me. And the first thing I do is I go through their stuff and I label my tubs. I have a little label maker. So first thing is I'll label it box one of the client, and then I start to bring out like items and put it in that tub. So just to sort by the type of media that they brought. And if it's all prints, meaning prints in frames, prints in albums, prints, loose prints, whatever, it doesn't have to be separated into a box, just that you get a shoebox maybe and put all the loose photos in that shoebox in box one. That would be something I would do. And then with all the photo albums, I label them album one, album two, album three, album four, so that I can keep track of which album I'm dealing with. What did I call it? And once those are outside of that album, I can still remember in my head, oh, it's the blue album with the flower print or whatever. And because I shoot every page of the photo album before it gets the prints get removed, it's another visual reminder of how that album looked for me before it got dismantled. So those are the first things I do.
Yeah, I do the same. And one reason for that is when you do get to scanning, you want to scan like items together. So if you have
Absolutely.
prints and you have slides and you have negatives and you have photo albums, you want to scan all your slides together because it's a slightly different process, for example.
Right.
I also label the albums. I just give them a number. I don't use any descriptions. It just slows me down a little bit. So I just use a number. And that way, later on, when I get back to number one, I know I can see that album. Sometimes in the folder name, I'll say, Blue Album, BO1, if there's a lot of albums. And that way, too, this will come up much later, but I actually always add the batch number. We're calling it batch numbers, just meaning the group that we're scanning. So if I have an album and it's, I say I have 10 albums and the first one is the first thing I'm looking at, I may name it, batch one. I actually also add that as a keyword later. And the reason is so that I can always find the photos that get back to that album. And
I
one
do the
reason
same.
is people tend to remember the album cover. We don't because they're not ours.
Right.
But if they're yours and you have a blue flower album and a yellow flower album and a album with a Ann Getty's photo on it, like all these things, some later on you might be thinking, gosh, I know I can't remember what exactly that photo was, but I know it was in that blue album, so you can
Yep.
always sort of figure it out later. But I do the same thing. I try and do the sorting as fast as I can because you don't want to get bogged down into looking at anything. You
Right.
just want to sort it. And I will also, after, say, I've already split up frames and albums and slides out of prints, I will then go back with the prints and usually flip them upside down so I don't get distracted, but sort them by size
Yep.
as
And
well.
I do
Just
the same.
because when you scan, it's best to scan by size. You have fewer things that you need to
Adjust for.
adjust
Yeah.
adjust for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you and I do camera scanning. Others that may do flatbed, it may not be such a big issue. But if you
Yeah.
are, if they're in pristine condition and you're using an auto feeder scanner like the Epson or Kodak, it's still good to have them in batches of similar sizes, or at
Yeah.
least if the batch has multiple sizes that you kind of go from small to big. However your process is in that way.
Yeah.
But it is helpful to gather like items.
And sometimes the scanner, batch scanner, will sometimes either jam or sort of miss-scan if you have mixed sizes
Yeah,
together.
because it
So
can't
that's
grab
another
them
reason.
so
Yeah, I can't
easily.
grab them
Yeah,
properly.
yeah,
And since we're actually starting with the physical stuff, when I was talking about the batches, the other thing I'll do is I have pre-made index cards with dates because I have multiple sets because then I can just pull them out for each client. But one of the things that's super makes this a lot easier if you're sort of sorting before you scan is to take some index cards and, write the year on top or an event
yeah,
and put that upright on your table. And here's the other thing: you should have it, if you can, a dedicated area where you're doing this. But then you can just sort of flip through and okay, that's I think 1970, I think that's 80s, and stick them on top of those index cards to make it a little bit easier so that you can scan all of those together. It's part of
yeah,
the organizing before you scan, makes things a lot easier.
yeah. Well, and you and I both sort and organize into batches, and I use batch cards, and then for that reason, the batch card has a year on it.
Yeah,
Because I can scan batches that are from, all out of order, any year, whatever. It doesn't matter because magically, when everything is done, then as you're digitally organizing, you can figure out where they need to be in what
yeah,
year, and then go back to that batch and look at the photos and say, oh, yeah, no, that's not 1990. That should be 85 or
yeah,
whatever. You can pull them out, but you know where to go because you've identified the batch where that image is.
yeah.
Yeah. It makes your organizing as you move through the project, you're kind of leaving yourself breadcrumbs, so to speak, that you can always figure out where something is. All right. So, in your home, if you don't have a dedicated place, what do you do? Well, you could get a temporary folding table like at Walmart or whatever. I think they're like 60 or $80 to get a
Mhm.
6 foot folding table. And you could put that up somewhere temporarily, but then you need a place to store them when you're not working on that project and you need to remember where you left off. So again, numbering your boxes is important, plus numbering the things inside so that you can have a project tracking list and you can say what you've done. So as you put everything back in the box, you can pick up that stuff again and begin your project again where you left off.
Yeah. If you can keep it set up for the duration of your project,
Well, that's
that
the
will save
best.
you an insane amount of time. It will also keep you moving forward because
Right.
once you put it away, it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind. I love those 6 foot folding tables. I have several. Well, they double. They're great for projects, and
Yeah.
then, you pull it out for your
Your
block party
family.
later
Yep.
on and your family picnic.
And your
One of
garage
my kids
sales.
took it to college. It's his desk. You never know, and so they're very handy either way. I also, if you can leave it out, so if you do have space and you can put it out and leave it in a corner or whatever, it will save you a lot of time because anytime you have to
Absolutely.
put it away and pull it back out, not only do you have to figure out it is a little, even if you keep notes, it's a little harder to figure out where you were, whereas if it's
Yeah.
out all the time, and maybe that will help you get through it a little bit faster,
Yeah. And then
maybe.
consider getting some sorting boxes that are really inexpensive so that as you're taking them out of something, you have somewhere to put them so they're not loose and floating around again, because now you're just
Yeah.
creating more mess. So what you want, I don't know where you get yours. I buy these, I think they're like 7, 8, $10 from Michael's. They're not acid free. They're just cardboard shoe boxes, and they're what I buy in bulk because it's easier for me to start organizing them in those shoe boxes. Plus, it gives me an idea of the quantity of stuff I'm dealing with.
Yeah. I use a lot of shoe boxes. There's 4 people in my house at any given time, so I get those naturally. And I've been saving them over time. I have and then I have a couple
You
friends
have
who
literally, you literally use shoe boxes, is what
I
you're telling
literally use shoe boxes.
me. Okay.
Yes, I can tell you that running shoe boxes are a good size. Hiking boot shop boxes are a little bit too big because they're a little bit wide. Little kid boxes are probably too small. But oh yeah, I literally use shoe boxes. And again, for all this part, you don't need acid free or anything. You just need something to hold
You
them.
just need something.
And if
Yeah.
you need more than that or you don't have shoe boxes, I have friends now that they will, all of my running friends, I have a couple groups, they will text me and say, because
Hey, I got
they get
boxes.
new running shoes every 6 months or whatever. So they text, you need these boxes, and half the time I say yes, right? You can never have too many shoe boxes. But if you don't have those, you can also go to the dollar store and they have, little cheap plastic trays that you can use over and over. I don't find those quite as helpful because the photos slide around a lot in those. It's harder. I like to keep them vertical,
Yep.
because it takes up less space. And shoe boxes, cardboard will do that, whereas the plastic, it kind of slides around and they're not the best size, but they are very cheap.
Yeah,
So
they
if
don't stand up
something
well until the box is full. So,
no. So then when the box is not full, here's your second tip. When the box is not full, you look around your house for if your kids have ever played Magic, those boxes, you'll know what I'm talking about, are perfect to stick in the box to keep things from sliding. I've used empty paper towel rolls to stick in there. I mean, literally anything you can stick in there to keep the photos from sliding
yeah,
down. Like, be creative. Just look around your house and
there's paper that people will wrap stuff when they ship it to you. I take that paper out.
oh yeah.
I don't use peanuts or anything like that because that could disintegrate or get on your photos. You don't want that. So you
Yeah.
want something that's not going to offload any particles or add dust or anything. So something clean.
Yeah. This is such a random tip that I really didn't think we'd be talking about today, but you know what? It's true. Like now I'm like literally looking around my desk here to see what is here that I would use. I've got a huge mug that would work. Like you can literally stick anything in the box to keep things from moving around. But it is helpful because that also you've got one box that's full of your stuff that you're figuring out what to do with. And then you have these smaller boxes, and once they're in there that you've dealt with them. And you
Yep.
may end up moving a few things around, but it gives you a sense of accomplishment to see the smaller boxes get fuller and fuller and the bigger box um, dwindle
Right. Especially as you
in
start to
size.
go through all your photo albums.
Yeah. And a quick note about, because you had mentioned pulling photos out of albums. I do a similar, I just snap quick photos with my phone of the number of so depending on what I'm using to mark the album. If you're not keeping the album and you're just, it's going to end up going away, take your little index card and write the number one on it if it's your batch one, stick that on top of the album for your first photo. I just use my phone and I will go through and take a picture of every page. And that's just to keep the order. So if it's important for that album to keep the photos in order when you scan them, you want them in order digitally, then you can go back to that if you need to.
Yep.
Um, Many of my clients want me to scan the entire page before I actually scan the individual photos, and that's so that they have a digital version of their album.
Yep.
So, if you're that when you're scanning at home, you would need to do that probably on your flatbed. Well, obviously, you can't do that on a quick scanner. And we'll talk about types of scanners later, but I do that first so that when I pull the photos out, I can at least keep the order because sometimes you'll pull them out or once you're scanning, the order will get messed up. And it doesn't matter for all albums, but it does matter for some.
Yes. Especially if there's the sticky kind that you might have a little trouble getting them off the page. So if
Yeah.
you do capture the entire page and you capture it well with a high-end uh, capture, if something were to happen, you could recreate that digital image of that
Yeah.
photo. Yeah.
Yeah. And if the photos are too hard to get out of the page, think to yourself, do I want the individual photo? Like, what do you actually want? Because for some people, they want the whole page. They want the way the photos interact with each other. And then maybe you don't want any of the individual photos, or maybe you just want one or two. So that's where if you want to take a better quality scan, and we'll talk about scanning methods a little better, that's where I would do it is with the album page. So that if you can't get them out and you end up wanting to you've got six photos on a page, but you want an individual of one of those, you need a higher quality scan. to get that
Yeah.
one later.
Well, and some albums, those ones that they were adding all the stickers and the words and stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
creative memories, those you really can't dismantle, and the client may not want you to. There may be scrapbooks that you've been handed to by,
Yeah.
your ancestors and your other relatives. There's many reasons why sometimes you don't want to dismantle a photo album.
Yeah.
And so scanning the what is every page and then trying to zoom in and get each individual photo. There's not a
Yeah.
way to zoom in on a flatbed, but
No, but you could do, you can crop the files, but
yeah,
yeah.
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 So that's a lot
Okay.
of pre-work that needs to be done before you dismantle the albums. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's pre-work that you should do on your computer.
Hmm.
So figure out where you're going to keep this stuff, at least temporarily. You don't really need to know its final home now. And I don't think we're talking today much about, where you should put them later. Those are other episodes that we've talked about, and maybe we'll do a separate one. But you do need a spot on a computer that has some memory or an external drive that you can scan to, and this is where your scanner will be attached to this computer. Make sure that you have enough memory and space before you start, and if you don't, get yourself an external drive so that you can make sure that you have a place to scan to. Create a folder, one master folder for the project, because in there you're going to end up making subfolders as you scan, but you want one folder that you know where it is. And I would say, if you can, leave it right on your desktop so that it's right there, you know where it is. Call it, Photo Hub, or call it, photo scanning project, something that you will understand and you'll see it. And if multiple people share the folder, put in capital letters, do not delete on
Yeah.
it. If it's just you, you're probably good. But if you're sharing that computer with anyone, you want to make sure that it's not going to be touched. And
Right.
do it to the computer that your scanner is attached to, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. And this place is somewhere where you could take digital notes if you prefer, rather than, taking
Mhm.
physical notes about your project. So it's going to be more than just, where the digital files end up after you scan too. So
Yeah.
it's just
That's a
everything.
yeah. That's a really good point. Figure that out at the same time,
Yeah.
as you're
Where are you going to
scanning.
take notes?
How are you going to, because you'll always need some notes on something, even if it's just where you left off or what I'm a big believer in writing down what you accomplished too. Not a huge whatever, but a line that says, got through the 1960s and 70s today. It'll make you feel good
Yeah.
later. And either, have a pad of paper right there or a notebook. I would say something that's attached. So a notebook where you're flipping pages, or a pad of paper where you flip over a page and not loose pages, because you will lose the loose pages for sure.
Yeah. It has to be
Um,
all in one place. Yeah,
yeah. And if
absolutely.
you're doing it digitally, you can use anything. You could use Word, you could use Google Docs, you could use Notes, you could use any of that, and just keep a running list of what you're doing and any notes that you need to take while you're tackling it. And sometimes it's um it can be things as simple as look for another copy of X. Often that's a photo, and if it's an important photo, you're probably going to have several of them, and there might be one that's in better shape than another one. So you might want to make a note to try and find that later, or ask so and so, or you know I don't know, you're seeing an event from a reunion and you're not entirely sure of the date. You can tell they all go together, roughly, but you're pretty sure that Aunt Marge will know when that is. Make yourself a note. Don't call Aunt Marge right now, because
You'll get
you'll never get
distracted.
your project done. But make a note to say, call Aunt Marge and ask her when, so and so's party in the Adirondacks was, because you'll
Well,
need that
and to
information
that
later.
point, the other thing I was thinking of is make sure you have your tools. You have, your Stabilo safe wax pencils to write on the back of a pencil, back of the print if you need to,
Mhm.
because in this dismantling, you're also removing photos from development envelopes or manila envelopes that somebody might have written on, or you might be taking photos out of a Christmas card that is in an envelope or something that has a date and the picture doesn't. So you might want to be able to just quickly write the information where you got it from, and be able to then trash the stuff that you don't need or want. And what are some of the other tools that are helpful? You might want something to help you remove your photos from your albums. You might want separate envelopes to put maybe real fragile pictures in so that they don't fall apart, or maybe they're already falling apart and you want to try and keep them together. So you want to have some of these tools at your fingertips so you can quickly use them and keep working.
Yeah, lots of index cards.
Index cards are good,
Um, and to your point about the pencil, never use a ballpoint pen. Never use a pen on the back of
or a
those photos
marker.
or a marker. I mean, you can use the markers that are made for this.
Yeah.
But the reason is I have had several clients who have dropped off, all their stuff, and they're so proud of themselves because they went through and they wrote on the back of all of those, dates or subject matters or whatever. Well, I pull them out, and because they were stacked and the ink hadn't dried, now all the photos have ink
On the other
on
photo.
the photo. And
Yeah.
you don't want that to happen. It's very hard to deal with. So don't use a ballpoint pen. If you're
Yeah.
going to use a pen, make sure it's like an archival safe, quick drying pen, and then
Yeah.
give it extra time to dry. Stacks of index cards are your best friend. If you pull something out of an envelope, you can write that information on the index card instead of on all 20 or 30 photos if you
Yeah.
want. I'm not a huge fan of sticky notes. I know a lot of people use sticky notes.
Ooh,
I never
no.
ever use sticky notes, and here's why. Rarely, but it can happen if you put it on the front of your photo, which you shouldn't do. It can pull off part of the photo. So
Yeah.
you don't want that to happen. If you put it on the back of your photo and you're using a fast scanner, a batch scanner, it'll get caught
Yeah.
and it'll jam. And so you don't want that to happen either. If you buy low quality or old sticky notes, they're going to fall off.
Yeah.
So when you're using an index card, you know it's not attached. So you're more careful about keeping it together. When you're using a sticky note, you think that it's going to stay there and you trust that. And then you find a whole pile of sticky notes at the bottom of your sorting box and you
Yeah.
have no idea what they go to. So I'm not a sticky note fan.
Yeah. Batch cards are the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your
And if you
batch
could
cards,
get,
index cards, it's kind of the same thing.
yep.
You have pre-made ones. I have some pre-made ones, but for people doing themselves, just get yourself, especially now this episode is in August, when all the back to school sales are on, you can get stacks of index cards, like hundreds of them for 50
And if you
cents.
can get something that's a little larger than the size of your photos, that'll be
Yeah.
helpful because then they stick out.
Yes. I
Yeah.
always turn them on their side. So the photos, it works well with 4x6s anyway. If the photos are this way, I turn the card that way so it's
Yeah.
sticking out a little bit so you can read it. Um, okay, so you've got your space, you've been sorting. What are some of the other things that you do, Susan, before you actually start scanning that will help you organize later?
Well, I have to know about the subject matter.
Hmm.
So oftentimes I will ask my client to fill out a family group sheet, and you can just Google that on the internet. I have one from the National Genealogy Society that I use. It's got like the parents and places for 7 children, and you can fill out the information, the name, when they were born, when they died, who their parents are, and then the children that they had when they were born, and when they passed, if they're no longer living. And you can then use that to start building a family tree essentially for them. I'm a visual person. If I don't have something like this, I can get the families all jammed up in my head, like what side is the Smith family versus the Victor family or whatever. And having something visual like this is really helpful. And then I turn around and I give the reports that I create, to my clients, and they're very happy about that because that's sometimes the first time they've ever seen a tree.
Yeah. I would say also, if it's for you, it's still helpful to write that down. You're going to know your own details and your immediate family, but you're likely going to find cousins and friends and all sorts of things in those photos. You might have the other side of the family, if you have a partner, you might some of those might be in there as well. Um, so I do something similar. I have a list. It's harder for us when we're working on other people's photos because we don't know any of them. So we really do need that big list. I would also say ask good old Aunt Marge if I actually don't have an Aunt Marge. I don't know why I keep using that word, but have it now. But maybe somebody has a family tree that you can use. Every family, it might be you, if you're listening to this podcast and you're the one doing the project, you may be the family historian, so maybe you
Yep.
have a tree. Um, but I used to have an uncle actually who that was his thing and he was really into it. So he had all those records. And if he were still here and I was doing my own, I would probably ask him right at the beginning, do you have a family tree?
Yep.
Because it just makes it a lot easier. Anything that can help you sort through quicker, it will help you a lot. But I will say, and we didn't talk about this because we're not really talking about culling, but in that sorting, I always and only sort by date. Always. I never sort by anything else
Yep. I'm with
because
you.
if you start sorting by people, then you immediately run into a problem with, here's a picture of me and Susan. What pile does it go into?
Right.
If you sort by date, you will never have that problem. Now, within the date, I will do an event, and that might seem subject based, so and so's wedding, but it's really date based. It's just putting it, if you think
Everything
about
in
it,
one
it's the
day.
wedding. It's yeah,
Yeah.
it's all the same. And I will only, and when I scan, I only scan by date when
Yep.
I'm naming and putting into folders
One
for the
batch
same
based
reason.
on a year or a month or a day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And there will
So,
be always at the end that batch of I have no idea when these are because I don't even know who these people are. So you may end up with a pile where you
but
just
if you
have no info.
sorted by size, right? You sorted the prints by size, it could still get you in the ballpark, even if you
It
don't
could.
know when they were taken. Because if you look at the development stamps on the back, the size of the
Yeah.
photo, whether it has a white border, if it was a Polaroid or whatever, at least you
Yeah.
could say, all right, Polaroids were like in the 70s. So,
Yeah.
at least I'm in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean you can usually get close. What I'm thinking more of is I always see at least a handful, usually a more that I really can't pin down. I know it's, sometimes 70s to 90s-ish because of the crappy double prints from Walgreens. But I don't recognize any of the people in them.
Yeah.
And I have people all the time that hand me stuff, and then I will show them photos. Now, who is this? I'm trying to fit it in and they're like, I have no idea who that is.
Yeah.
No clue. So it's harder, but so don't feel badly if you've got that stack at
Everybody
the
has
end.
that
Hopefully
stack.
it's small. Hopefully it's small and you can kind of sometimes you can figure it out as you go along. But going back to the group sheet, you can use that to make a simple timeline. Write down, and it's actually helpful before you start thinking about if they're your own photos, think about what you're likely to find in there. There's maybe some wedding photos or a bar mitzvah or, birthday parties, and maybe make a quick list of what some of those are so that when you start to come across them, you can create a pile for them. You don't, because what'll sometimes happen is you'll see some and okay, you're going to throw that into a certain year. And then you'll start to see some more 2 days, 3 weeks later. Oh, yeah, I think that's the same thing. Well, if you have the event, if you've thought of it ahead of time, you can have a little card, a little area for that event. And so that you can more easily put those together.
Yes. You never know how, especially when we were making doubles of or receiving doubles from the development companies, and some would go into photo albums, some would go into family, you would gift them to family, And then when they pass, guess what? Now you got them all back. So you
Yeah.
not only have two copies, you may have four. And they're in different boxes. So that to that
Yes.
point, you're going to start seeing, oh, I see this picture again. Or school photos are famously distributed amongst multiple
Oh, yeah.
families. And then those are like the worst for me because then you have to try and age people, right, on the fly. Oh, they lost their two front teeth. They got to be what? Um, you know, uh, seven, something like that, six,
Yeah.
seven, something like that. So yeah,
If you're lucky, the school photos are still in the envelopes they came in, which I see 80% of the time because nobody does it. You get the whole package and there's like three missing. Somebody cut out
yeah.
three wallets and gave them to relatives and the rest. And often those packages will say the
What
name and
school
the
year?
year
Yeah,
or the school
and the
and if
grade.
there's a class photo, I mean, I love school photos because I find them I'll line them all up when it's people I don't know so that I can try and figure out. Anyway, that's a little side note. Okay, so you've got all your boxes, you've got your table, you've got all your index cards and things, you've created a quick timeline or a group sheet is also of who you might see in there. Then what?
Well, now it's trying to as you're culling through your stuff, trying to figure out what you want to scan, and you're gathering them into these sorting boxes, and we've written down the batches, and you're probably ready to scan, right? You've got everything, and the batches don't have to be in chronological order. It could be
No.
batch 1, 2, 3, and the date of this is 1970, and the very next batch is 1, 2, 3, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 4 or something. And it could be from, the 1990s. It doesn't matter. You don't have to. I would just scan based on the batch and then make sure that somehow you're referencing, once they're digitized, the batch number and the year that you just
Yeah.
scanned. So you can do that in the file name as you're scanning them if you're using many of the auto feeders. Um, when you're using a flatbed, because I know you started out using a flatbed, I
Mhm.
did not. Is there a way to easily batch name your files with a flatbed? You have to do it one by one, right?
Yeah, there might be depending on what software you're using. I don't worry too much about the file names. I make sure the folder name is correct. So I will name the folder with the date
Okay, that's a
and
good idea. Yeah.
with the date first always. Date first always so that things will sort in date order. Later your folders will, and I will also make sure the
Digitally. Yep.
batch name is in the folder. But even when I used to batch scan or even when I camera scan, I don't worry about the file name itself at all. I just make sure it's going in the right folder because I don't like to stop to rename things a lot. So it's
Yep.
faster for me not to. On a flatbed, I would make the folder before you start scanning that batch, and then scan directly into that folder. That is
And
where it is worth taking a touch of time. You don't want to just sit down and scan everything into the same folder because you think it's going to save you time. It
oh yeah,
might save
no,
you
it's
time
not.
in the scanning, and it's going to cost you a lot on the back end. If you take a few seconds to create a new folder with the date, at least the year, but the date as much as you know it, a
Hmm.
subject if it has one, like wedding.
Right.
I
If
don't
if
take too
all the
long on
photos in that
subjects.
folder is going to be one thing, that's
Yeah,
kind of unique though.
if it's one thing, I will make a subject, but a
Yeah.
lot of them will just say 1975 underscore. I'm a big underscore fan. Um, B001,
Yeah.
batch one. So I can keep it together. And then I don't worry about the file names at all. I just make sure they're going into the right folder. And that would hold true for flatbed scanning and for batch scanning. I would
Yeah.
do that the same way. There's always that you want to do things as fast as you can. So you need to figure out where you can cut time
And
and
putting it in one
when it's
folder is
worth
not
it to
going to
wait.
cut time.
No,
Yeah.
you do not want to. I made a lot of mistakes when I first started because I was like, oh, I just want to get these scanned and
Yeah.
I'll deal with them later. Never, ever, ever scan and deal with it later because it will take you 10 times as long. It's much
Right.
harder to sort through things on a screen than it is on paper. So I would say, attach your scanner, set it up to feed into the right folder, and check that every single time you are scanning a new batch is to check the folder that you are going to scan it into and then go along your merry way. Um, I do think we should talk a little bit about different types of scanners. We're not going to go full on into this because we do
Yeah.
have another episode on it. But it's worth talking about a little bit about some of the options. Do you want to start on that one?
Well, since you were already talking about flatbeds and you have that experience, I'm going to let you start with that.
All right.
I have an old Epson V550 that I was using in I would say the mid 2000s, like 2005, 7. And I go back and I look at some of those scans and I think, oh, I'm so glad that I have the system I have now because,
Yeah.
you know, things have improved. So
Yeah.
talk a
I
little
think
bit
it
about your
depends what it
flatbed.
is, actually,
Yeah.
because okay, rarely, but I still have my flatbed scanner. So when I started my business, I wasn't sure if I was going to include scanning, and so I didn't want to invest a whole lot of money on it. So I started with an Epson V600, which I think is still the best flatbed scanner if you can find one. But well, maybe not because it used to be the best because it was very inexpensive. It was like $200 and it could do prints, it could do
Oh, you can't
negatives,
find
it
it
could
for
do
that now.
slides, but I think they're harder, much harder to find now, and they're probably a lot more money, so maybe it's not the best option. But um I think they still take decent scans. I think it depends on what your subject is. If you are scanning a horrible, I'm just looking around for an example, but I don't have any right here. If you're just scanning at your standard 4 by 6 that's from the 80s or 90s, it's not a great print anyway. It's fine, and you love it because of what it represents. Flatbed is more than fine. If you are trying to scan, wedding photos taken by a professional photographer, flatbed's probably okay. A batch scanner will absolutely not be as good, I would say. But the flatbed, for your purposes might still be okay, especially when that's what you have, right? You have to use what you have, unless you want to go and invest, it could be thousands of dollars in like a camera scanning system that we use for the personal library. I don't think it's as important, frankly. Um, but I have used because in my business initially I was a flatbed and then I realized it's too slow. Flatbeds are very, very slow. Doesn't even matter what the settings are on, but they're slow. It's one photo at a time, or you can do 6 or 12 slides, and those are like, I don't know, a minute or two per slide. It's very slow. I do think it's better quality than a batch scanner, but a batch scanner like the Epson 680, or there's a new one that I haven't tried. Not
Scan
coming to
snap.
me. No, not that. Anyway, there are others out there
Okay.
where you could do a stack. So that is
Oh,
great for those, 4 by 6 prints. The quality, I don't think the quality is as good on those, but it's much, much, much faster. So if you have a lot and you have a lot of standard 4 by 6s,
well, with the
you might
auto
want to think
feeder, you're
about
still
that.
going to have the option to choose 300, 600, or 1200 pixels.
Yes.
So that, because you can choose how many pixels it's saving on on the file size, that gives you more to work with, I think.
It does, but I think that a lot of the quality is not quite as good,
Yeah.
regardless of the size. So it just depends on the quality of the photo. Again, I would not put older photos through there. I would not put
Oh,
anything
absolutely not.
fragile through
Yeah.
there. I wouldn't put anything with glitter through there.
Or
You never know
anything
what you're
that
gonna
has,
find.
some sort of sticky back, even though
Yeah,
you think you've cleanly removed the photos from those sticky back pages, the
yeah,
magnetic albums, there's still some residue that can really screw up your scanners. So you want to be
yeah.
careful with that. And I don't know of any way of getting that off, and
I mean, you can use what is it? Undo
Yeah.
to get some stuff off. It would be very, very slow. I mean, you'd have to go photo by photo to try and get the sticky off. Um, but
That's
there
the
are a lot of
advantage to
options.
that's
Yeah.
the advantage to having a flatbed,
Yeah.
to go to, or a camera scanning system, because you're not feeding it through something that's going to get gummed
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
And there's some additional decision points too, right? So you're starting this project and you're dedicated to doing this project, and this is mostly for the DIY folks who are listening. And think about, do you have a scanner already? Do you want to or can you invest in one? If you don't, or if you do, can you invest in a better one? And it's important to think about it right at the beginning, because let's say you have nothing, but you're invested in this project. Well, then you can decide and you should think about, what kind of scanner can you afford? What can cover all of your stuff? A batch scanner will be much faster, but it can't do everything. A flatbed can do everything, but it's going to be very slow. So you have to think about what kind of time do you have. You have to think about your budget. Um, does your library have a scanner? Our public library, which I can walk to because we have so many branches, has one that could do up to, I think it was like 12 by 14. So on a flatbed. So, think about what all your resources are. If you have mostly standard size prints, maybe you get a batch scanner. And if your library has a flatbed, maybe you bring the rest
The
over to
fragile
the
stuff there.
flatbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so really think about that and I would think about that up front. One place where I see people fall down is they have an old all-in-one photo printer scanner, and those are almost never good enough for photos. I can't say carte blanche that none of them are. I clearly
Well,
haven't
they're not
tested all
designed
of
to
them, but
be,
they're not,
yeah,
yeah,
they're not
they're
designed
not
to be.
designed
They're an
for it.
office all in one, and typically they're not in the business of scanning photos. They're in the business of scanning documents, and documents don't require,
Right.
the high resolution. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
One of the nice things about the batch scanner, actually, before I forget, is you can set it to scan the backs as
yes.
well, which can be extremely helpful if you have notes on the backs of your
Well,
photos.
and they also have this auto restore. And,
Yeah.
although they're not perfect, it can lighten and brighten and fix some of the color issues that you might
Hmm.
find with some old photos. So,
Yeah.
we talked about this, and we have a little note, that we kind of talk about back and forth before we have these episodes. And you have this note that, with the hybrid approach, that, maybe you get both. If you can find, inexpensive scanners that work on eBay, you might be
Hmm.
able to afford to get both a flatbed and an auto feeder,
Yeah.
but it depends on your budget and what you can afford. Now, if you don't want to bring your stuff to a professional like someone like Allison or I, then you might want to consider looking at the outlay of money to do all this, get the, because it's not,
And time.
and time,
And
and
time.
figure out, since this is going to be a one-time project, is it really worth it to go out and buy these devices, buy these
Yeah.
sorting boxes, buy the table, buy the pencils, and your time, when somebody else can, perhaps scan this for you, and then you can just worry about, doing some of the facial recognition on your own, or the keywording later.
I think you definitely want to think about time versus money and your budget, all those things. And do you want to do it? So I have lots of DIY clients that I coach. A lot of them are retired. They want to do it. They want to create this legacy for their family, and they want to do it. They'll feel really accomplished when it's done. They don't mind that it can take a while, but they enjoy the process. If you are looking at this with dread, then you need to be thinking about outsourcing.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at it saying, you know what, I do have some time and it doesn't bother me to do it myself. I'll watch the movies while I do it and whatever, then, go for it. But I would think about some of this in advance and see what you can find, see if you have the budget to get a new scanner or two, um, go for it because you know where it's been, you know it's cleaned. But you can get used ones. I actually sold my original flatbed to somebody who wanted to do their own collection, and it was in perfectly fine shape. It's just something I wasn't using anymore. And, for half the price that if he had bought it, uh, from
Brand
a
new.
store.
Yeah.
But also take a look and see what your library has. Because if you have a smaller collection, or like I said, if you have mostly standard size prints, you could do a bulk of that, make a one-time investment on a batch scanner, take care of that part of it, and then go to the library and do the rest.
Well, and if your community has a makerspace, they also
Yeah.
may have these to be able to rent out. I don't know how that all works. I've never been to one
Yeah.
because I typically have all the stuff I need myself. But, yeah, do some research, ask around, and maybe a friend or family member already has something that they're not using.
Yeah.
So,
Or maybe you have a friend that also wants to tackle this project and you share the scanner, or one of you uses it first and then gives it to the next person. Now, we should talk for a moment about phone apps because we're asked this all the time and we get advertising on it all the time. What are your thoughts on phone app scanners?
if that's all you have, then I would say go for it. And one of the things that I have shared with a lot of my friends, rather than necessarily buying an app that already is going to just take over the camera in your phone, the Google Scan app. I don't know if you've used that. It's a little cumbersome because the concept of that app is to get rid of glare, which is
Right.
like the devil of taking camera scans because you have to have enough light to photograph it, right? But then you don't want the glare. And the Google Scan app actually is kind of interesting because you click scan and then the app puts these four little dots and you have to one by one shuffle your device over the photo to match the dots. But when you do that, it wraps up those four captures in an actually a pretty good image, resulting image. However, it's very time consuming.
Slow. It's
And
very
you've
slow.
got your hands up like this for hours, which is not good. But
Yeah.
for that one off or a handful, you got 50, 100. But if you're talking thousands, I don't know if I'd want to do it that way. What's your thoughts?
Yeah. I've tried the Google Scan app. I don't like it. It takes too long. And
I
I
know, but it gets rid of the glare.
kind of, not always. Sometimes it does. And that actually is one of the biggest problems that people have. Like forget quality, forget everything, but when you're trying to do it with your phone, the biggest problems I see are glare
Yeah.
and
Or
and
reflection,
and
especially if the image
reflection.
is shiny.
You can have half the time I see in as half the time I see in clients' digital collections where they have gone and taken a bunch of old photos and you see their face reflected, like and their
Yeah.
camera right in the scan. And the other thing is being able to hold it flat
Perpendicular.
because otherwise your scans are gonna be a little bit like this, which is
Yeah.
which is off,
Cockeyed.
and it just doesn't do as good of a job. I will say though, it can definitely come in handy.
Yeah.
If you are visiting a family member and you realize they have some stuff you want,
Yeah.
use your phone for sure.
Yep.
If you can't take it with you, if you have a bunch of stuff and you really don't have time to do it right, and you're moving and you're worried about it getting lost, or you live in a fire or a flood area or whatever, you can do phone scans really quickly, especially with an app like Photomime will do that pretty well.
Yep.
You can take multiple at once and it will auto crop them so you have four different scans instead of one. There is nothing wrong with doing that with the hopes of maybe getting slightly better later, but you have to work with whatever is going to get the job done
Right.
for you. And if you are super overwhelmed or you don't want to spend a whole lot of money or you don't have time, but you don't want to send it out for whatever reason, then yeah, do it with your phone.
Yep.
That's,
Yeah.
I think it's you just gotta do what you gotta do. And so we don't do that, but we have the full equipment. There's no reason for us to do it.
Right. Unless we travel and we're in that situation where you need a copy of something.
Well, yes, yes. But like I had years ago, somebody contact me and she was in like North Dakota or something, and she's going to visit a family member and they have a ton of albums and all the old photos. And there's no way she was going to be able to take it back with her. It's just boxes and boxes, and she was flying. So we had talked about it, and I said, if you have time while you're out there, maybe it's worth using an app on your phone and see how much of that you can get through. And then when you have time or when it can be shipped or when you're out there with a big car and can drive it back or whatever, then you can pull it back and, get it done for real. Well, that's what she did. And she scanned like 3 or 4 boxes of albums. It might have even
Oh,
been more than that.
that's great.
With her phone, and she took one small piece of it with that was most important that she could put in her luggage. Well, she got in touch with me like 2 months after that. The house where it was stored burned down and all of it was gone. So if
Oh my
she
gosh.
hadn't done that, right? If she had said, I'm just gonna wait
Yeah.
till I can get this stuff to me, then she'd have nothing. So I will take a phone scan any
Any
day,
day
every
over that.
day,
Yeah.
over nothing.
Yeah.
So just, keep it in mind. They're not our favorite. I don't think the quality is as good. I don't think you can do as much with the file. Um, we're always thinking, because it's our job, about long-term preservation. For many people, they're never going to print these again. They're never going to put them in a book. They're literally just going to live on their phones or whatever. So,
Yep. It's
might
really
be all
up to
right.
the person to figure out, what's important to them and
Yeah.
move forward from that.
Yeah, I will say one more thing on that is I had done a video for the photo managers a few months ago about this topic of picking a scanner. So we will stick that link in the notes along with the other episodes that we've mentioned where we've talked about some of
Yep.
this stuff. Okay, Susan, you've picked your scanner. Doesn't matter which one or which method, but what are the basic settings that you would use to make sure you get a good digital file?
Well, since I have the fast photo, and I haven't opened up the dialog box for my old Epson flatbed,
Well,
I'll
I'm
have to.
thinking more about resolution size,
Oh,
and I'm not
well,
talking about like
I'm
actual,
trying to
like,
visualize the actual dialog box.
no, 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 no. People are going to have to do something for themselves.
No, but
That's what,
I
no, no,
I
no.
would
I'm
look
thinking more about, what
the
DPI do
pixel
you choose,
size.
what file
Yeah.
format, what pixel size, that kind of thing.
So JPEG, some of them give you the option for TIFF, and if you ever think that any of your images you may want to blow up larger than an 8 by 10 or 11 by 14, then you'll want a TIFF. But TIFFs are really large, and then so they're going to eat up your hard drive space. They're going to be harder to, um, you know, uh, just use in general because of the size of the file and stuff. So JPEGs are best and 600 pixel per inch. I wouldn't go less than that. Um, you could do 1200, but I don't know if you're going to really see the
I don't think you
quality.
see any benefit
Yeah, I don't
over
think
600.
it just eats up more hard drive space to
Yeah.
store it.
The only time you might think about using a TIFF too is if you have an older photo or any photo really that you want to have restored
Oh yeah.
in some way. If it has scratches or writing over it and you want to try and restore it either yourself or send it to somebody to fix it, a TIFF is better than a JPEG in that instance.
Yeah, because you're giving it more data per pixel for somebody to work with. So
Yeah.
that's why you would want something like that. And then again, with the fast photo, it's got that software to kind of do auto color correction. I kind of
Mhm.
like that. I don't know if I would do the auto red eye because if it applies it in a bad way, it's really hard. You'd have to go back and find that photo and rescan it. So I don't do red eye on the fly. But the Epson fast photo would allow you to do the capture as is and then give you a corrected version and you could compare which one you like. So I usually turn that on.
Yeah. I would turn that on. And then I would look at a bunch. I wouldn't look at every single one, especially if you have a lot. Try and decide which one you want, because now you're going to have total decision fatigue. I would look
No,
at
but
a few of them and say, okay,
overall, yeah.
overall, okay, I do like the way it restored the photo, so I'm just going to segregate the rest, and you can pretty easily sort out, you know,
Yeah, if you,
which
because
is which.
normally they do underscore A and underscore
Yeah,
B. And if you're scanning the backs are B. And then the ones that have not been edited usually don't have the
yeah.
underscore something. So
So
you can
you can,
easily
yeah,
sort them in your Windows Explorer or Finder for the underscore part and then separate the good ones out or whatever you
yeah.
want. Yeah.
And I would just look at maybe a few different batches from a few different time periods to see which version you like better, and then just make a wholesale decision and say, okay, I'm going to keep all of the restored ones, or I'm going to keep all of the originals, and then just put the others to the side. You don't want to
Well,
look at every
because
photo.
restoring them is a whole nother project,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a lot.
Yeah. And I think we mentioned this already, but I would, while you're scanning, I can't emphasize this enough, but make folders for each batch with the
Yes.
date and the batch number and maybe a subject or if it's there. But do that while you, no matter what scanning, no matter what you're using to scan. And if you're using your phone, we know one we didn't talk about is if you're not using an app at all, you're just using your regular camera. Um, if you
Well, that's
turn
just going
on
to
the,
pop into your camera
yeah,
roll.
that just goes
You,
right into your camera roll. But
so
I
you
would
could create
say,
albums
yeah, create an album for scanned photos and
and
then like
then
a folder and then
subfolder.
sub
Yeah.
ones in there and turn on little grids so you can hopefully hold your phone flat if you're
So you're
doing
not
that.
going to
But
change your process just because you're using your phone, is what we're trying to say.
exactly. You still want to segregate those. And they don't really segregate. They're still going to show in your camera roll, but you
You
can put
want
them
to
into an
scan in
album
batches.
so that yeah, so that you
Yeah.
can find it later. Okay, what do we have next? Organizing your photos after. I'm not sure how far we want to go into that.
Well, I think today's discussion is about getting to that point of
Yeah.
digitizing and not necessarily taking people to the next step, although we can probably do this conversation. Um,
I feel like we have done that conversation, but maybe we haven't
or
done it sort of start to finish. Like, what do you, maybe
Well, I
that's a
know we
part
had
two.
Caroline Gunter in here and
Yeah.
we talked about her DPO process. So, but yeah, we certainly can have a whole other hour on what to do once they're digitized.
Right. I would say, I usually, like with clients, I always start with the end product. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want? And I do think that is helpful to think about before you start scanning. But to get you started so that you can actually get the project off the ground, I think that you can leave that for a little bit later. And that while you're scanning, just try and get the basic organization done while you scan, which is scanning into the proper folders. Now, you might want to make some notes while you're doing that, say, oh, batch seven, tag these with such and such. Or you might think of while you're scanning, because you're seeing your photos, you might start to think of the types of photos you want to search for later and make that list. Your pets, right? Are you going to want to name those by the pet name if you've had many? Or there could be other things in there.
Right.
Obviously, in my collection, if I were scanning and there's a collection of old bird photos, I would absolutely be writing down, batch sevens where all the bird photos are.
Yep.
So you can be thinking about future organization while you're scanning and taking a few notes, but you want to just you need to get it done,
Yeah.
right? Um,
So we didn't talk about, where would you manage your digital files? And again, that pertains to, the digitizing, I'm sorry, organizing your digital
mhm.
photo section. But you could use something as simple as Adobe Bridge. It's free. That will look at all your scanned photos, and then you can add keywords and things like that.
Yeah. And Yeah, I think we should, we'll think about doing a part two, or we do have other episodes where we talk about it. I don't think you need to decide on where you're going to store these before you start the project. It's not going to matter in the end. You still have to get everything scanned first, and if you scan it into folders that have chronological names, because that will help you date the photos
later
after
on.
you scan, which we haven't talked about at all. But there's lots of different places you can put it. I don't think you need to worry about it right at the beginning. Just make sure at the beginning, in terms of digital organization and hardware, is naming the proper folders and making sure you have space and making a backup daily or every scan session, I will say. If you're not doing it every day, obviously you're not making a backup daily, but make sure that your only copy is not on the desktop of your scanning computer.
Yeah.
Get
So
yourself another drive, or if you use something like Backblaze, that's automatically backing up. If you don't have that, um, if you don't have, yeah, if you don't have a backup already set for your computer, then get a little drive like Susan's holding up so that after every scan session, you can just copy it right onto there.
so I
And,
have
I would,
scan one and
yeah.
then I have scan two. So use scan one for client projects, and then when I'm done for the day of doing my scans, then
Hmm.
I back it up to scan two.
Yep. Always. You do not want to do all that work and then have your computer die or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
a horrible
And I use
feeling. So,
Backblaze as well, but I don't typically back up, my scanning drive
yeah.
because I've
I
got the
would. I mean, if you're DIY and you have Backblaze or something
oh
similar that
yeah,
will
if you're
auto
DIY,
backup,
yeah. But I mean
I
for
would
me,
absolutely let it go. I always have a backup in addition to that though, because it's much faster. Having a drive, I have like a gazillion of them sitting right here. Something that you can literally just pick up
yep,
and plug in. You definitely want to have that. And so you want to do that on a regular basis. I would say after every scanning session, I would do it. I would label the drive as the backup so that you're never, you don't get confused as to where the
which one
master
is the current one
might
you're working on?
be.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I will do when and that you should consider doing, so you're scanning for the day and you have your master photo hub or scanning folder, whatever you call it, and all the subfolders in there. I would create another folder inside that master, and I would label it backed up to or copied over to, scanning drive one or wherever it is you're making your backup. And I would slide all your folders in after you've backed them up. I would move all the photos on your master into that folder that's called copied over to X. The reason is when you start scanning tomorrow, if you are not scanning in order, so you've scanned already, three folders that are in 1975. Well, tomorrow, if you scan two more folders that are in 1975, you're going to forget what you already copied over to that drive. So you can either every day copy the entire thing over,
Like have a
or you
sync, like sort of a
or have a
syncing app
sync
or something. Yeah.
service, or whatever I mean, automatic's always best. I'm talking
Yeah.
about if it's manual. It's super handy to then know that, okay, I just have to copy over these five, and I know exactly what I did today because all the rest are in that copied over to scanning drive
Yep.
folder. So that's a little tip that might be able to save you some time. The other thing you can do, if you're on a Mac, you could color code the ones that have been backed up, but I find just visually moving them into another folder is a lot easier.
Yeah. I love color coding and using tags on my Mac system. So
Yeah,
um that's
as long as you
that's
don't
really
forget what
helpful.
they mean. So write that down in your notes.
Well, there's a way to type
No,
in what okay. So yeah.
yeah. So I
I
mean, I
think
think
we've
that's I
I
think
think
we've
we've
done it.
hit our comments that we wanted to express today.
I do. I think the most important thing is not to get bogged down in trying to be perfect. The goal here is to get it done. Once it's digital, you've then by that point, even if you've done nothing else with it, you've made a backup of what you have so that if something happens, you've got it.
Yep.
And once you have it digital, you
Even
can
if it's
pack that stuff away.
unorganized, it's
Even if
backed
it's
up. Yeah.
exactly, if it's just in that folder, because the digital organizing of what you've scanned is a phase two.
Hmm.
So try to just focus on the phase one and get that done in the time that you have, but try not to sweat too much over the details. Don't let it, cause anxiety. I have seen it cause people anxiety where they're just looking at it going, oh my God, there's no way. And if you do find yourself, really anxious about it, or it's just giving you
Well,
heart
reach out. We
palpitations
can give you
thinking about
support.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, then reach out, find somebody in your area that can help you. And if I would say actually, if it's causing that much stress, then you're a good candidate to send it off to somebody else.
Right.
But even if you're doing it yourself, like focus on what you're actually getting done. Celebrate the fact that you just moved four more folders into that copied over folder, like that you've just scanned. Oh, here's one last tip that I should have mentioned way earlier. If you have all, once you have all your batches before you've started scanning and you have them in your shoebox, I have a new Brooks Ghost 18 box that's coming into service for my new shoes. And you have them in there, and then you're using that as your scanning box. You're pulling from that box. Get yourself a piece of construction paper of color, some kind of color, something that's tall that will stick up, right, scanned at the top. Stick that at the back of your box, and as you pull each batch out, you scan it, and then you put it in the
Put it.
back of the box
Yep.
behind the little button that says scanned, so that you always can tell where you are. That's a little practical tip
See,
that
and
I
what I do is I move them out of the unscanned to a box that I label scanned. That's how
Yeah,
I do it.
I've done it both ways. It depends on the type of things and the organization of the stuff that I'm scanning.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's easier to get everything organized exactly right in the first place, in which case I don't need a second box. I can just use that little
Yeah.
thing that stands up, or if you don't have as many boxes, frankly. So either way, little tip.
I
But
definitely like having a box start to become empty, 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 a big tub with multiple
yeah,
media just become empty, 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 empty as I scan. And then the other one that is my done box become full and full and full. I mean, it just
yeah.
lights me
For
up. And
me, the
I,
visual actually works better with the little, I have green. I use
yeah,
green for good or done. Um, I take my little construction paper, I cut it into thirds. So I've got three little scan, and I love watching all the things go in the back. And then I have a series of boxes, and at the front of each box is a green tag sticking up that says scanned. It's visually very satisfying.
yeah,
I think both of
definitely.
them. And as you do it, all I was getting at too is that helps you visually see how far you've come on this project. So even if you still have a fair bit to do, having those visual cues that you've done plenty, right? So just keep plugging away at it
Yeah.
and it'll eventually get done.
Progress over perfection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this has been fun. I think we've nailed it. If
Yeah.
you think of any questions for our listeners that we missed something, or if you're wanting us to dig a little deeper, please reach out. Let us know. We love to get your feedback. Let us know if we're on the right track, if this has been
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah,
And you could drop us a review too. We don't plug that very much, but reviews help. If you want to add a review, it helps other people find us. It also lets us know that we're not just talking to ourselves once a month
yeah. Well,
and
I
that
know
people are
people are
getting value.
watching because I
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
like on YouTube, I'll see, how many minutes people,
yeah.
will listen. But no, we would definitely appreciate your feedback and like buttons. Subscribe to our channel if you're on YouTube. Subscribe if you're using one of the podcast apps. Yeah.
All
So,
right.
and we appreciate everybody that is already been with us and all of the comments that we've gotten. Sometimes I like going to a conference just to hear our fellow members say, "Oh, I love listening to you," because that just gives us,
I
you
love
know,
when clients say,
yeah,
"Oh
and
yeah, I
clients
listened to
too.
that one," or yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. And it's fun, which is why we do it. When it becomes unfun, then we stop.
yep,
So anyway, this was a fun episode. I have a feeling we'll do a follow-up. If you do have questions, make sure that you send them to us at insidephotoorganizing.com.
yep. And
And
we'll post
yeah,
our links of the other podcasts that we previously spoke about, and we'll list those in our resource page.
yeah. All right.
All right. Well, thank
We'll
you,
see you later,
Allison.
Susan.
Another one's in the can.
Another one's in the can. And we'll see you next month.
Until next time. That's it for our show today. Remember, you can find this episode on all of your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to click follow so you can stay up to date with the latest in photo organizing. We'll catch you next month.